Welcome to the deep dive. You're here, I imagine, because you want to get a really solid grip on a pivotal time in history.
hmm
The rise and the dramatic fall of the Bronze Age empires.
Yeah, it's a huge sweep of time.
We've pulled together a lot of information
Yeah.
based on some pretty detailed research, and the plan is to really hit the key takeaways, those moments that make you go, aha.
Mm.
Maybe even some things you weren't expecting.
Exactly.
So let's explore these thousands of years, these powerful kingdoms and their, well, sometimes very sudden ends.
It's truly fascinating stuff. What's incredible, I think, is seeing how all these things, innovation, conflict, even the environment, how they all kind of mesh together to shape things.
Right.
Our goal here is really to bring some clarity, help you connect the dots between these ancient societies.
Okay, let's dive right in then. How about we start with a story most people probably know, at least the legendary version, the Trojan War.
Ah, yes, Troy.
We all picture that massive wooden horse, right? And how it supposedly brought down the city. But what's really interesting is that maybe behind all the myths, the heroes, the gods,
Yeah.
there might be some real history there.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, you find these Hittite records from around that time,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually mention an Alexandrus sounds a lot like Paris, the Trojan prince, doesn't it?
It does.
And they also talk about a pretty big war right there, same area, same sort of time frame. So when you put the legends next to these, separate historical accounts, it starts to look pretty compelling.
And it gets even wilder, right? Because there's this idea that natural disasters might have played a part.
Right.
Earthquakes, specifically.
Yeah, the research we looked at points to that as a real possibility in Troy's fall.
It even ties into the mythology, Poseidon, god of the sea, but also earthquakes. And he was supposedly on the Mycenaean side.
Which really shows you how ancient people tried to make sense of these huge, powerful forces around them. It's a theme we'll see again, this mix of human action and environmental pressure.
Definitely. Okay, so let's move east a bit, from Greece into modern-day Turkey to the Hittites. Now, these guys were a real powerhouse.
Oh, absolutely. The Hittites left a huge mark.
And a key thing about them, they were pioneers with iron, weren't they?
Yeah.
Mastering how to work it. That must have been a huge advantage.
A massive leap. Think about it. You're moving from bronze, copper, and tin into the Iron Age, and the Hittites were like right at the forefront.
So better weapons.
Better, stronger weapons, yeah. But eventually, iron becoming more available, even though the Hittites tried to control it at first, that probably changed tools, farming, everything. And their military wasn't just about the metal. Their chariots were apparently top-notch.
Yeah, the sources we saw describe these really organized three-man teams who had a driver, an archer, and someone with a shield. That level of coordination.
Yeah, right. That points to a really sophisticated military mind, doesn't it? Real tactical thinking.
But they weren't just warriors. Culturally, they seemed quite open.
Tolerant, yeah. That nickname, the people of 1,000 gods,
That says it all, really.
it does. In a time when, sticking to one set of gods was often the rule, the Hittites seem to have been okay with incorporating others. Maybe that helped them manage such a diverse empire. For a while, anyway.
And they were smart cookies, too. Writing systems and all that.
Two systems, actually. They had hieroglyphics, kind of like the Egyptian picture writing, and cuneiform, that wedge-shaped writing on clay tablets, shows real administrative skill.
Okay, so powerful, innovative, tolerant. Sounds like they had it all figured out. What went wrong? Why did the Hittite Empire fall? Doesn't sound like one simple reason.
No, it rarely is it? The evidence suggests a combination of things hitting them at once.
Like what?
Well, internal problems, civil strife, weakening them from within. Then you have these mysterious invaders, the sea peoples, causing chaos. And on top of that, major climate shifts disrupting food supplies, trade, everything.
A perfect storm.
Pretty much. That tangle of challenges is really key to understanding that whole Bronze Age collapse period.
Okay, speaking of sea powers, let's pivot to the Phoenicians. Fascinating group from modern Lebanon, right?
That's right.
And their name, Purple People, coming from that expensive purple dye they made.
Right.
It's such a vivid detail.
It really brings them to life, doesn't it? And, I mean, their contribution to, how we communicate right now is just immense.
The alphabet.
Exactly. The Phoenician alphabet, it's basically the granddaddy of the Greek and Latin alphabets. So most Western languages owe them a huge debt. It's hard to overstate that.
Truly foundational. And they weren't just sitting at home writing. They were out there trading, colonizing.
Master seafarers.
Yeah.
The sources talk about them founding Carthage, which became a huge deal later, obviously, and just dominating trade all across the Mediterranean.
What were they trading?
High-end stuff, mostly. They were known for amazing craftsmanship, like glasswork, building great ships, and they dealt in luxury goods that everyone else wanted.
So we've seen these powerful empires rise, like the Hittites, and then face collapse. Which brings us to that period, roughly 1200 to 1150 BCE, the Bronze Age collapse. Sounds pretty dramatic.
It was a time of just massive upheaval across the whole region, the Med, the Near East.
What drove it? We mentioned climate change for the Hittites.
Yeah, that seems to be a big factor everywhere. The research points to long droughts, really messing with agriculture, then add in devastating earthquakes hitting vulnerable areas.
Wow.
And all that environmental stress just shattered the trade networks these civilizations relied on.
It's quite humbling, isn't it, to see how vulnerable even these, advanced societies were to climate shifts.
Absolutely. And then thrown into that mix, you have the sea peoples.
Ah, yes, the mystery invaders. The sources say we're still not totally sure where they came from. Sardinia, maybe? Western Anatolia.
The origins are murky, yeah. But their impact, undeniable. They're linked to widespread destruction hitting the Minoans, the Hittites, the Mycenaeans, just waves of disruption.
So they just swept through.
Seems like it. They really mark a turning point. But not everyone fell. The sources mention Egypt, right?
Yes. Pharaoh Ramses III. He managed to fight them off, didn't he? The Battle of the Delta.
He did. It's a crucial counterexample, shows that some kingdoms could resist. Which brings us neatly to ancient Egypt itself. Such a long, influential history. Where do you even start?
Good question. Maybe right at the beginning. The unification, way back, around 3100 BCE, by Narmer, founding Memphis, and then, of course, the pyramids.
That seems logical. Those early steps really set the stage for, well, millennia of Egyptian civilization.
And the pyramids, just incredible feats. The sources mention Imhotep, the guy who designed the first step pyramid. He was so revered, they later made him a god.
Tells you a lot about what they value, doesn't it? Innovation, genius, and the sheer logistics of building them.
Yeah.
Staggering.
How many people?
The estimates are like over 30,000 workers involved. The organization required, just immense, all orchestrated by the pharaohs, who were seen as, divine go-betweens.
And it wasn't just men in charge, right? We hear about female pharaohs, too, like Queen Nitocris.
That's right. It definitely challenges some common assumptions about women's roles back then.
Okay, so after the Old Kingdom pyramids, there's the Middle Kingdom expansion, some religious changes, and then the New Kingdom. That's the one many people know best, I think.
Yeah, the New Kingdom, that's where you get Tutankhamun King Tut and that incredible tomb discovery that just, blew everyone away.
Still does.
Absolutely. But the New Kingdom also had really significant long-reigning pharaohs like Ramses II.
Ramses the Great. The sources highlight his big military campaigns, but also something really groundbreaking, the first recorded peace treaty, right? With the Hittites, no less.
Incredible, isn't it? A landmark moment. Actual diplomacy, negotiation, trying to settle things down between major powers thousands of years ago.
So diplomacy isn't new.
Not at all. But even Egypt, despite its resilience, eventually faced decline. Internal problems, famine, invasions. It was a slow erosion.
Leading to foreign rule.
Yeah, eventually the Persians conquered Egypt. Then later, Alexander the Great kicked the Persians out, liberated it, and famously founded Alexandria there.
Wow. Okay, from Egypt, let's jump over to Persia itself. The Persian Empire. Starts with Cyrus the Great, doesn't it? Sounds like quite the character.
Oh, absolutely. Cyrus comes across as remarkably modern in some ways, for his time anyway.
How so?
Well, he conquers Babylon, but then he frees the Jewish captives there, and he issues the Cyrus Cylinder, often called the First Human Rights Charter. Pretty forward-thinking stuff.
And the sources mention his policies too. Religious tolerance, apparently against slavery, trying to govern different cultures inclusively.
Exactly. It's a real contrast to how some other empires operated back then. A different approach to holding a vast territory together.
Who came after Cyrus? Darius and Xerxes. They're famous for building Persepolis, that amazing palace complex.
That's right. And also for tangling with the Greeks. Marathon, Thermopylae, those legendary battles.
It's a legend indeed.
Right.
But the Persians were more than just military, right?
Yeah.
Efficient administration.
Very efficient, yeah. They had a sophisticated system for managing the empire, and they promoted Zoroastrianism, which had a big cultural impact.
But like the others, their time came too.
Yes. Alexander the Great again. He conquered the Persian Empire. Although, interestingly, the sources note Alexander actually respected a lot of Persian traditions, kept some things going, so not a total wipeout, culturally speaking.
Okay, let's loop back west a bit. Carthage, founded by Phoenicians, right?
That's the story. Queen Dido fleeing Tyre, founding this new city, and it just boomed. Became a massive trading power, huge navy, really carried on that Phoenician seafaring legacy.
What do we know about their culture? Gods.
Their main gods were Baal, Hammon, and Tanit. And there are these quite controversial accounts, mostly from their enemies like the Romans, about child sacrifice. It's a darker, more mysterious aspect of their culture.
And then Rome, the Punic Wars, epic conflict.
Absolutely epic. The sources always highlight Hannibal, of course, crossing the Alps with elephants. It's just an incredible military gamble.
Brought the war right to Rome's doorstep.
He really did. Shows incredible leadership, strategy. But in the end,
Rome won. Utterly. 146 BCE. They destroyed Carthage completely. The stories say they even salted the earth.
yeah, that's the legend. Whether literally true or not, it symbolizes total destruction. Rome wanted to make sure Carthage never rose again.
Brutal. Okay, moving away from settled empires. What about nomadic groups? The Scythians.
The Scythians. From the steppes north of the Black Sea, fierce warriors, nomads, famous for tattoos, actually, and incredible horse archery skills.
Masters of the horse and bow.
Definitely. And there's that intriguing link the research mentions to the Amazons.
The warrior women of myth.
Yeah. The idea is that maybe those legends weren't pure fantasy. Perhaps they were based on Scythian women who were known to be quite capable warriors themselves. Maybe they even formed the Sarmatian tribe through intermarriage, as a whole layer to that Amazon myth.
Fascinating. What happened to the Scythians?
They kind of fade from the historical record around 300 BCE. It's a bit of a mystery, their disappearance.
Okay, westward again. Iberian Peninsula, Spain, and Portugal. Before the Romans got there, who lived there? Iberians.
Primarily, yes. The Iberians were the original inhabitants. Then, Celtic groups started migrating in, and they mixed, culturally blended, to form the Celtiberians.
So a fusion culture.
Exactly. Shows that constant movement and mixing of peoples.
And they didn't exactly welcome the Romans with open arms, did they?
Not at all. The research talks about fierce, long resistance. Leaders like Valerius, Sertorius, they really fought hard against Roman expansion. It took Rome a long time to fully conquer the peninsula.
But eventually, Rome did take over.
Yes, and that Romanization had a huge lasting impact. Language, law. You still see it today.
Okay, further north now. Scotland. The Picts. Sounds mysterious.
They are quite mysterious. The Romans called them the Picti, the painted people. We know them mainly from Roman writings and these amazing carved stones they left behind.
With symbols we can't read.
Largely undeciphered, yeah. Adds to the enigma. They also managed to keep the Romans out north of Hadrian's Wall, mostly.
Tough fighters.
Seems so. They held on for centuries, later converted to Christianity, St. Columba played a role there, and then eventually they merged with the Gaelic Scots.
Forming Scotland.
Basically, yeah. Under Kenneth MacAlpin in the 9th century. That unification was the beginning of the Kingdom of Scotland.
Right. And finally, we should probably touch on the Celts more broadly. They were spread all over Europe, weren't they?
Hugely widespread. Gauls in France, Britons in Britain, Irish tribes. A vast cultural complex, not really a single unified empire.
What were they known for?
Really complex, beautiful art, strong warrior traditions, obviously, but also a rich oral tradition, stories, poems, laws passed down verbally.
And the Druids.
They were the spiritual leaders, judges, lore keepers, and interestingly, the research notes that Celtic women seem to have had a fair bit more independence than women in, say, Roman or Greek society at the time.
But they also clashed with Rome.
Oh, yeah. Famously sacked Rome itself way back in 390 BCE, a huge shock to the Romans, but over time, like many others, most Celtic groups were eventually conquered and absorbed by the Roman Empire.
Okay, wow. We've covered so much ground,
Yeah.
from Mycenaeans and Hittites right through to Celts and Picts. Looking back at this whole sweep, this Bronze Age world and its aftermath,
Yeah.
what are the big takeaways, the main themes?
Well, one thing that really jumps out is just how cyclical it all seems. Empires rise, they flourish, they seem invincible, and then they decline or collapse.
Nothing lasts forever.
Exactly, whether it's war or climate change or internal decay or often a mix of all three. That pattern repeats again and again. It's a pretty sobering lesson from history.
But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? Amidst all that, there was incredible creativity, innovation.
Absolutely. That's the other side of the coin. Think about the breakthroughs, metallurgy, ironworking, these vast trade networks they built, writing systems popping up, different ways of governing societies.
Laying the groundwork for later stuff.
Totally. These weren't dark ages in that sense. Foundational innovations happened during this period.
And the legacy.
Yeah.
These cultures didn't just vanish without a trace, did they?
Not at all. Their languages, their religions, their stories. echoes of Egypt, Persia, the Greek world, which built on Mycenaean foundations, the Phoenician alphabet we mentioned. Their influence is still woven into our world today. It's quite profound when you think about it.
It really is. Well, this has been quite the journey, a real deep dive into this transformative era. We've seen so many connections, haven't we, between these different peoples and how things like climate, technology, politics, society, they all interacted.
Definitely all interconnected. Which leads us, I suppose, to a final thought for you, the listener. As you think about all these empires, their amazing achievements, their societies, but also why they fell. I mean, consider this. What parts of their stories, their innovations, or even their failures feel most relevant to us now? What lessons, if any, can we draw from the Bronze Age for our own complex world today?
Something to chew on. A really interesting question.